Welcome to Changing Higher Ed, a podcast dedicated to helping higher education leaders improve their institutions. With your host, Dr. Drumm McNaughton, CEO of The Change Leader, a consultancy that helps higher ed leaders holistically transform their institutions. Learn more at changinghighered.com. And now, here's your host, Drumm McNaughton.
Thank you, David. Our guest today is Dr. Mark Roosevelt, president of St. John's College. St. John's is the third oldest college in the U.S., and it's unique. Its curriculum is based on the great books of the Western tradition, and its courses aren't taught per se. They've totally flipped the classroom to where faculty and students teach and learn through discussions facilitated by Socratic questioning. But this isn't the only thing that makes St. John's unique. St. John's, under Dr. Roosevelt's leadership, engineered a tuition reset 4 years ago, reducing their tuition 40% from $55,000 a year to $35,000 per year. And they've made it work in class sizes of 18 students and 2 faculty members who facilitate discussions. And about adjunct faculty, well, all their faculty are full-time. Finances? Their applications and enrollment have increased since the tuition reduction, and they remained revenue positive since instituting the change. And oh, by the way, their enrollment has increased $250 million over this period. Dr. Roosevelt joins us today to talk about the tuition reset and how they've made it work. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Been looking forward to our conversation. You're up there at St. John's in Santa Fe, New Mexico, about 60 miles up the road from me, and you're doing something that most presidents would love to be able to do, but they can't figure out a good way to do it, and that's a tuition reset.
True enough. We're very happy we did it. It does have some challenges, but I think the positives way outweigh the negatives.
I fully agree. And let's talk about how you got to the point of saying to your board, this is what I want to do.
Drumm, it's interesting. St. John's prides itself on being very contrarian. We've resisted a lot of trends in American higher education that we think are ill-advised. But we were also embarrassed, to be honest, that we had participated in this astronomical increase in the price of the college, the sticker price of the college. Because as we both know, the real price isn't the sticker price, but all of a sudden, we looked up and we had a $55,000 a year tuition. And, that's higher than the average income in the state that we're lucky enough to be located in. So we were embarrassed. And we felt that an awful lot of kids for whom our very distinctive education might well appeal were just not even looking at it because of how astronomical the cost of it was. So we looked carefully at the pluses and minuses of it. We heard all of the negativity. There's so many people out there telling you don't do it because people will think you have a lower quality product if you lower your tuition. And people say, heck, if you give somebody a scholarship, you charge them $60,000, but you say, you're such a spectacular student, we're only going to charge you $30,000. That's a lot better than just charging $30,000. And I don't think all of those arguments are specious, but they do get in the way of doing something that I think is just plain the right thing to do, which is bringing, the advertised cost of college way down. And everybody, I hope, knows, and we've tried to put it out there, Drumm, that even once we say our tuition is, $35,000, that we still have ample scholarship aid for those from families for whom that number is not affordable. Mm-hmm. So we didn't look at it that long. We didn't hire any consultants. We just were embarrassed, and we wanted to change it.
Well, St. John's is a unique institution. I mean, you've got your campus in Santa Fe. There's another one in Annapolis, right down the street from my alma mater, the Naval Academy. But it is very unique in its approach to education. For those presidents who aren't aware of it, tell us a little bit about it, if you would.
Oh, Drumm, we could fill up the whole rest of your show. However unusual you think we are, we're more unusual. We have an all-required curriculum. So there's some electives in senior year, but really almost no electives. Everybody takes the same courses and does the same studying at the same time. You have to learn a little ancient Greek. You have to be able to do some advanced physics and calculus. You read Hegel and Kant. It is a very challenging curriculum. We don't have professors. We call our faculty tutors because they don't profess. They lead the seminars by asking questions of the students. It's entirely Socratic method. We have no lectures. We have no adjunct faculty. So the educational program is expensive. It's basically 2 tutors in a room with 18 students. So the campuses, the Annapolis campus is the 3rd oldest college in the country. Santa Fe is 54 years old. There are no frills, no fancy dorms, no fancy food courts, not even a swimming pool on either campus. We put our money into the classroom because that's what we offer. So we are essentially, Drumm, doubled down on our distinctiveness. We're running a capital campaign right now called Freeing Minds. I think it's the only capital campaign in the country that doesn't have a new program or a new building. We're talking about raising $300 million, and we've raised $250 of it, just to make more affordable and keep doing the education that we offer. So, highly unusual college.
Very much so. And to be able to talk about Hegel and advanced calculus and physics in the same breath is pretty amazing.
And think about this, Drumm. The faculty teach all across the curriculum. So even if you have your PhD in philosophy, which I think is the most common PhD our faculty have, you also do science labs, calculus, physics. And I just entertain myself sometimes asking myself what it would be like to go to a more traditional liberal arts college and say, oh, by the way, next year, you all have to teach all across the curriculum. Now, again, you're not lecturing, so it's not as difficult. And what you're really doing sometimes is learning with your students. You're sort of the more advanced learner in the room, but you're learning with your students.
Well, what you're telling me is you have completely flipped the classroom. It's not just a minor flip.
Completely. It's, a tutor trying to educate poor old me, who when I first got to the college probably didn't do a very good job of understanding the whole thing. He said to me, Mark, you have to understand that even a question is different at St. John's. At a traditional college, a professor asks the question of the students because they know the answer and they want to see if the students do. We don't do that at all at St. John's. At St. John's, you ask a question, it's an invitation to go on a journey together, in which probably there isn't even an answer at the end of it. But there's none of this, what was the year in which the Civil War started? When was the Emancipation Proclamation? Do you know this? There's no tests like that. We read only original sources, no secondary materials, and discuss them Socratically in small seminars. That's what we do.
That is amazing. And I would be willing to bet that the folks, your graduates, are off the charts when it comes to critical thinking.
That's what we hope. That's what we think. We have some evidence for it. We're not perfect, Drumm. Sometimes you go into a classroom and, man, you are so uplifted and impressed. It's like almost a jazz concert in which people are riffing off each other. It's beautiful. And sometimes you go in and it just isn't working. The students need to do their work. If they're not prepared, it's much different than showing up at a lecture class ill-prepared when nobody will notice or nobody will pay a price for it. Everybody in the class pays a price if the students aren't prepared because it doesn't work. It's a challenging model. It asks a lot of the students. It demands a lot of the students. And if they don't meet that demand, it doesn't work so well.
Mm-hmm. Well, that really explains the uniqueness of your campus there in Santa Fe, your university, and the Annapolis as well campus. Now, it did kind of surprise me, and I realize I'm getting a little off track for what we were going to talk about, but this is fascinating for me. Your biggest single social event of the year is?
Oh, now you're going to embarrass me, Drumm. Well, in Annapolis, it's croquet. It's the annual match against the Naval Academy, where we know some very good people have gone in croquet. And yes, it seems bizarre, but people love it.
Well, I will have to at least attend, if not get pictures of the next one.
You should, since you went to the Naval Academy. And, we can't do it in Santa Fe, of course, because we don't have enough grass. But it's a big deal on the Annapolis campus, as is waltzing, as is crew, because they're right there on the river, as you know. In Santa Fe, our non-academic activities are more solitary, hiking, rafting, that kind of thing. I mean, each campus is so culturally different because of the geographic area that it inhabits. Both are in small state capitals, Annapolis and Santa Fe, both very distinctive places with very different feelings to them when you visit.
Very interesting. So let's swap back to tuition resets. You said you made that decision very quickly to go there. How did your board take all this? Tell me a little bit about the process that you went through from, I would assume, discussing it with your cabinet and saying, yes, this is something we need to move forward with.
Well, certainly we discussed it internally at great length. We read studies that had been done of how it had gone at other institutions. And we made the decision that you either do it, commit yourself to it, go all in, or you should step away. Our board wanted it to be explained to them. They wanted to understand the gains and what possible deficits there were. But really, we didn't have much dissension. And we had a lot of pride. There was a lot of pride about doing it. And again, Drumm, I want to be very careful. I'm not high-horsey about this at all, and we shouldn't be. We participated in the escalation. I think the price of higher education went up something like triple the annual cost of living increase for about 25 years, right? I mean, so when I went to college, and I went to Harvard, it was $6,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what Harvard is now for full-pay students, but it's got to be north of $60,000. That's a tenfold increase during half of my lifetime. So,
and that was only, 10 years ago, 15 years?
No, that's very funny, Drumm. No, I went to college in the 1970s, but again, I do think we need to pause. I mean, sometimes we need to step back and just look at ourselves and say, what are we really communicating to people? What we're intending to communicate is that we have something very worthwhile on offer. I mean, that it is a very worthwhile experience to go and get a liberal arts education. But does that worthwhileness need to be coupled with a price tag that is beyond the means of almost everybody? And again, people who come from families that are used to this, they know it's a game, right? They know that the sticker price is not what most people pay. But for first-gen kids, for families that don't have experience with college, they just look at that sticker price and they go, wow, we better look closer to home at a community college or something more affordable for our kid, no matter how much that kid may yearn for the spectacular things that are on offer at liberal arts colleges. So I think it's a very bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we've been honest with ourselves about how bad it really is.
Well, I agree with you. The price of education has become almost a luxury versus a national necessity.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, and I'm not one who thinks that every kid should go to liberal arts schools. I mean, for many kids, a vocational school, vocational training is the right thing. So at least they'll be employed for something that's available in the job market. But for many kids from all different backgrounds, liberal arts should not just be for the privileged. Liberal arts fulfills a yearning that is very deep in many people. And not only that, which I think is important because I do think it's supposed to, offer you a more fulfilled life, but also we believe, as do many, that it prepares you, not directly, not vocationally for the workforce, but as you mentioned earlier, it prepares you to be a critical thinker. And since many jobs are going to change so much over the next few decades, critical thinking skills are important in the job market. So it's not just a luxury of being able to spend 4 years, contemplating the most important questions of human existence, which, by the way, is a worthwhile thing to do. I think it does also prepare you for a very complex, very competitive job market.
I agree, very much so. And the AAC&U does their study that comes out every 3 years, and they look at the skills that employers want. In the latest one, they wanted the ability to work effectively in teams. The second highest, critical thinking skills.
Yep.
Third, the ability to analyze and interpret data. These are things that your graduates are able to do in spades.
We believe that very strongly.
So getting back to the process of, and For the listeners, I'm fascinated by the school because it was one of the ones when I was looking at my undergraduate school, I strongly considered going to. And, ultimately opted for a technical education at the Naval Academy rather than a liberal arts education at St. John's. Having said that, the process going through, so you analyzed it, you took a look, you talked to the board asked questions, the board gave you a thumbs up. It couldn't have been that simple, though. There's got to be a lot of steps.
Well, here's what I really believe, John. You've got to want to do it because you believe you should do it. Because there are people who will come right at you and tell you you're nuts.
I agree.
They're going to tell you that it devalues your product, that people will look at us and say, your tuition's in the mid-30s. But over here, this other liberal arts college is a $65,000 tuition. That must be a better school than you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a hard argument to refute. So you've got to want to do it because you believe in it. We wanted to do it because we believe in it, because the evidence is very mixed, and their arguments against it are very strong. I just think that they're not as compelling as the fact that we've just plain gotten ourselves in a bad place. And yes, we do hope other people will do it too. We don't preach at people. Every institution's got to make decisions about what's best for them. This was best for us. And we're real glad we did it.
And so from a revenue perspective, did you stay revenue neutral?
Pretty much. A little positive. We don't know, of course, because of COVID, how it's going to play out over a number of years. Our application pool increased. And the band of families we wanted to see increased applications from was sort of middle upper income, people for whom the tuition just is beyond their reach before, but it was getting closer to being in their reach. We still give needs-based aid, a lot of it, but we ended up slightly revenue positive. But I have to also be honest, Drumm, we didn't have that many full-pay students at the old tuition.
Sure.
I can't remember how many. We only have about 850 undergraduates on the two campuses. We're very small. So we weren't risking that much at the high end. So we did come out slightly revenue positive from the change.
And of course, the capital campaign, how did that play into all this? Is that something you started prior to doing the tuition reset, after?
Simultaneous. And our messaging to our alums was, first of all, we had surveyed our alums, a vast majority of whom said they probably couldn't afford to send their own kid to their college, to St. John's. So we knew there was a great deal of receptivity in our alumni community to doing this. We coupled the announcement of the tuition reduction with a expressed recognition that we were going to now be more heavily dependent on philanthropy to run the college. And again, this is why we don't preach at other people. We're lucky. We have an alumni community with the capacity to meet that challenge. So we had one donor offer a $50 million challenge to our alumni. So if they give $1, it'll be matched up to $50 million. That helped a great deal. We've met that match. But it was kind of a rallying cry, Drumm. Again, since we don't have any new programs on offer or any new buildings, we were saying, help us make the college more affordable for future generations. And that seemed to have resonated with our alumni community.
Well, it makes perfect sense because once you get your endowment up to a certain level, you can use the interest coming off of the investments of that endowment to be able to fund operations, fund scholarships, which is ultimately what you want to be able to do.
Absolutely. And again, some institutions don't have that possibility, and so we're not preaching. We do. So now our endowment is about $240 million. It's headed to a range probably where it'll be $350 million. That's not like the Princetons, which, by the way, have $3 million in endowment for every student they serve. But it will give us about 20 to 25% of our operating expenses covered by the endowment draw, which is a comfortable place to be.
That's nice. That really is, and it makes good sense to be able to do that. How much of your operating budget do you have to count on for donations, or does your tuition cover pretty much everything, tuition and interest?
No, our education costs about 60 grand a year. So even a nearly full pay student gets a 50% subsidy.
Okay.
And that's essentially from our endowment draw. We also do other things, Drumm. We have adult education programs. We have other revenue sources that help. But no, our student-derived revenue, even at full pay, is only 50% of what the education actually costs.
That's big.
Well, it's, as I said before, 2 tutors, no adjunct faculty, in a room with 18 students. That is an expensive model. That's what we do, and that's what we want to do. We don't want to change that. So we know it's an expensive model. We happen to love the model and believe in it, so we have to find the money to pay for it.
I get it. That's, it's a conscious decision not to go with adjuncts because obviously you would be able to, quote, save money in that.
The tutor and the quality of the tutor is at the heart of what we do. So I'm not trying to diminish the talent of many adjuncts, but first of all, it takes time to learn how to do what we do. Faculty tend to get better at it as they get more experience in it. And again, sometimes they'll be teaching courses way outside their academic sweet spot. It takes time and dedication to learn how to do that. I co-taught a senior seminar my second year here, and I was lost a lot of the time. It's just so different. I taught at Brandeis and at Carnegie Mellon, but I was used to the more traditional form of lecturing and doing it that way. It's very difficult. You can't bring in secondary sources, for example. So you're just in the book. You're in the reading, and that is what you inhabit during the time of the class. It's a particular way of doing things that takes talent and experience to deliver. So it would be unfair to bring people in who don't have experience with it.
That makes perfect sense. Now, as you roll this out, how did you announce this to your students, your alumni, your faculty? How did you roll it out? The decision's made. You know you're going down this path. Walk us through that, if you would.
Well, there were some complexities to that. Imagine being a recent graduate who'd paid the old tuition. We knew that there would be some blowback from people who'd say, "Hey, how about a refund for me?" Right? Mm-hmm. We also this was complicated, Drumm. So at a let's just take round numbers. At a $50,000 tuition, your son or daughter may have been getting a $20,000 scholarship. So we reduced the tuition. Let's just put it at $30,000, right? You're not getting that same scholarship anymore. So some people were saying, "Wow, you took away my scholarship," right? Well, no, your net is the same. But so there was a lot of communication challenges to it for existing students and for recent graduates. For incoming students, it was very easy. It was very simple. It was just good news. And for some existing students, they did see a reduction in their tuition, so it was good news for them. But many people were alarmed. They said, "We had a $20,000 scholarship, and now we only have a $5,000 scholarship." Well, you're still paying us the same amount, but it seemed like we had taken something away from them. So that was delicate and difficult, but we're small. And again, for a larger place, it would be harder. We could have individual conversations with students and their families, and we did need to do a lot of those. But for the marketplace, for the people out there considering St. John's, that was not that complicated. We just said, we've lowered our tuition. We haven't changed our education. It's still the spectacular, distinctive, transformational education that we offer. But we want to be able to start the conversation with you at a more decent, more affordable place.
Was it from an enrollment perspective and the conversations that your enrollment folks have with prospective students? How did that change the script for them?
It gave them a way of opening a conversation more advantageously. And again, we needed to continue to emphasize, Drumm, for folks for whom this new reduced tuition is still out of their reach. We do have a lot of needs-based aid. Mm-hmm. We did reduce what's called merit aid. And merit aid is a big problem in American higher education because it often has nothing to do with merit, and it's often offered to families that can afford things. So merit aid now is a much larger total sum than needs-based aid in American higher education. And I'm not saying that all of it is ill-considered, but a good deal of it needs to be reconsidered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I get it as well. So it changed the conversation with the enrollment folks. What other conversations had to change?
That's the main one. And of course, our enrollment folks had to be dexterous at explaining that nothing had changed at the college. We hadn't taken something away from what we do. And so, because it's not that common, as you pointed out in your opening comments, people are still taken aback by it. And people need to be very good at explaining that, it doesn't represent any diminishment of quality.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big issue, and that's what causes other colleges to hesitate.
And the pundits will say that never reduce your tuition. You can always give more discounting, but you can never raise your tuition once you've lowered it. And I don't buy that.
Well, we hope not to have to raise our tuition from here. I mean, maybe we'll do small increases as time goes on, but we haven't raised it since we lowered it significantly. I don't buy it either, Drumm, but I do understand. I do understand the arguments. I do understand that they can be very persuasive, and I do understand that they're widely believed. I mean, what would really be good is if we all did this together, of course, but that's not going to happen. So some people just need to jump in.
And when did you actually do this? When did you announce the tuition was being lowered?
Drumm, you're talking to somebody who has zero memory. I think it was I think it was 2018.
Okay.
For the 2019 year, but please don't hold me to that.
So it was prior to COVID.
Well, oh yes, it was definitely about 2 years prior to COVID. Yeah, doing it in symmetry with COVID would have been disastrous.
Yeah, I kind of think that. And so it's been running now for a couple, 3 years.
Yep.
What are the lessons you've learned through it?
Not to be scared. Not to be scared off.
Big lesson.
Again, please, I don't like to sound high-horsey about this. We were as guilty as anybody, and you just got to be bold. You've just got to put aside all of the, as you point out, pundits who will tell you you're making a tremendous mistake, and just ask yourself, is it the right thing to have a published tuition, even with substantial discounting that happens, that sends the clear message, this education is beyond your reach. And, even with our tuition in the 30s now, that's a big number. That's a big number. And, so we still have to persuade people, please apply. When we figure out your family income situation, we will calculate your need and hopefully be able to make it affordable for you. That conversation is still a difficult conversation to convince people to move forward and take a chance and then find out what it is that it will really cost them. But at least the discussion starts at a more reasonable place.
I understand. Now, my sense of you is you are a very transparent person. That's the way that you operate. That's the way you work with the folks that you work with. How did transparency play into all this?
I think it's essential, and I think it's essential that you come across as sincere. It doesn't get seen as a gambit or a gimmick. So I do think transparency is very important, and I do think not being preachy is very important. That's how we went about it. And again, we're a small place, Drumm, so it did make it a lot easier to communicate to our community what we were doing and why.
If every change management project that I've done, every strategy implementation, the number one rule is be transparent. If you really want shared vision, if you really want to proactively defeat resistance to change, people need to know truth. They need to know why this is happening.
I agree with you, and they need sincerity. and they need authenticity. It can be perceived, for example, as a desperate measure, right? We're in trouble. Therefore, we're lowering our tuition. Well, we weren't. So we had to communicate that out too. This isn't being taken as a desperate act. It's being taken actually as an act of strength. And we were in a position where we could afford to do it. You're right. I think change management, which is, something that we all study and we all try to get good at, I think you're right. You have to lead with honesty and authenticity and just put it out there. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And happy to answer any questions you have about it.
You're absolutely spot on. And so how would you advise other college presidents who are considering doing this, tuition reduction or a new financial model?
I would, first of all, again, not being preachy, make sure that they ensure that they do have the alumni support and the potential fundraising to be able to succeed at it. I think they need to think carefully about what group of students this will give, make their college more attractive, more within their range. And then, as you've pointed out, Drumm, they need to figure out how to language it, both to their existing community and to their prospects. But what I would also say, again, hoping I'm not being preachy, please don't let perceived wisdom here deter you from moving forward, because I think this is one of those places now where we've all been listening to that perceived wisdom too hard for too long, and things got way out of whack because of it.
I fully agree. And so, Mark, as much as I've enjoyed this, we're coming down to the end of our conversation. So, as we always do, 3 takeaways for your fellow presidents and board members.
Don't be deterred. Think about bottom line things like, is your published tuition price scaring away people for whom your education might be life-changing? Just ask yourself those hard questions, and you'll come out in the right place.
Great. Thank you. Great takeaways. And so what do you see? What's next for you? What's next for St. John's?
St. John's? Well, it's a very funny question, Drumm, because St. John's just wants to continue being St. John's. We really believe in this very unusual, very contrarian education. We believe that we are not the right place for everybody by any means, but for those students who are seeking, who have a yearning in them, maybe their high school experience didn't work for them, but they have something in them that wants to spend time asking fundamental questions and reading some of the great texts and spending time in that place during their college years, probably the only time in their lives they'll be able to take that journey. We are definitely the right place. And we want to continue to be available for students regardless of their family's financial means with this transformative education for generations to come. So it's kind of an unusual message, is we want to keep on being who we are, but make sure that we are available. And this generation of students is poorer than previous generations of students. They have less resources. So we want to make sure that we're not pricing ourselves away from the kind of student who really prospers here.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. You're transforming higher education in a different way than is the, quote, traditional transformation. It works for you guys, and I wish you guys all the best luck. I will be up to visit campus one of these days.
Please do, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for being on the show, Mark. I look forward to the next time.
Me too.
Thanks for listening this week, and a special thank you to this week's special guest, Dr. Mark Roosevelt, president of St. John's College, and for his sharing his insights on how they've been successful in reducing their tuition. Our next guest is Dr. Cynthia Jackson Hammond, president of the Council for Higher Education Accreditation. Dr. Jackson Hammond will be joining us to talk about what's going on in the accreditation world and what accreditors are doing to both drive and keep up with the higher education transformation we're experiencing.
Changing Higher Ed is a production of The Change Leader, a consultancy committed to transforming higher ed institutions. Find more information about this topic, along with show notes on this episode, at changinghighered.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the show, and we would also value your honest rating and review. Email any questions, comments, or recommendations for topics or guests to podcast@changinghighered.com. Changing Higher Ed is produced and hosted by Dr. Drumm McNaughton, post-production by David L. White.